Hey everyone, Russ Hamilton here. Anyway, got another great video for you. I think you're going to find this one informative, educational, but most of all, I hope that this is going to help keep you safer in the correctional world in which we work. This is brought to you by Guardian RFID, and it comes to us from Jefferson County in Illinois. This happened at the courthouse. This was during a transport inside, and you're going to get to see how this whole thing transpires. Once again, I want to emphasize this is not meant to criticize any particular individual. I just know that any mistake that's made that we can't draw a lesson from is a squandered opportunity. All right, people, this is the intro. I got this video directly from the Illinois State Police site. So as this opens up, you're going to see him positioning this wheelchair, opening the car door. To me, this is the first big mistake, is taking off these restraints. I know he's probably doing it to let the inmate bridge over to the chair, but there's no sense in doing this at this point. This is what leads to a lot of the rest of what happens. So now he's going to try and position the wheelchair there. The inmate will bridge over into it, and then he'll move him away from the car. I don't know if the inmate talked him into doing that or if this was his idea. Second big mistake. He starts adjusting the stuff. The inmate sees the gun. Here he makes his move. So as the fight ensues and the struggle goes on, they both end up on the ground. No good retention techniques. And here the inmate now has the gun. Now you're going to see the officer give up to try and save himself from being shot. And now the next officer is going to come through the doorway. Good use of cover. Comes back around, takes the shot. The inmate throws the gun. And that's the end of it. Let's break this down. You look at a video like this and you just know that so much of this was preventable. This was the kind of thing where, having some situational awareness around you would have made all the difference for this particular individual. But let's just break it down a little bit more. First, we're going to look at it from the tactical level. And by tactical level, I mean what was going on in the there and now with those particular individuals. And then later on, we'll back up from that a little bit and we'll talk about it at the strategic level, because there were some things there that really needed to be called attention to as well. So the first thing that you see is, the car in the sally port, and this officer is getting ready to take and push this wheelchair into a position that he can get this guy into it. So that's the point at which, I really first see an issue here. This is the kind of thing that's going on a lot. And this harkens back toward a little bit more on the strategic side, because this guy has no one with him. What's their policy? What's their procedure for this, right? I think that this is one of those areas where we can really look at, that complacency component of it. Now, if you guys haven't heard me say this before, you're hearing it now. Complacency is situational awareness perceived, but not achieved. And with that, we know that complacency leads to something that's really dangerous, which is that big word, assumption, right? We make an assumption. So right off the bat, and I'm not going to pretend to be in this particular officer's head, but I think that maybe the people that put him on this path, they might have been there. The officer might have thought this wasn't going to be a big, huge issue because of the mobility problem. It's obvious that this particular inmate has a severe mobility problem. So what are you thinking? No problem, right? We're just going to make that assumption right off the bat. This is just going to be, be down there to the courthouse and back, and not a big deal. Well, it turned into a very big deal because what? Somebody made an assumption. Somebody's situational awareness was perceived. I know what's going on, but not achieved to, having to write all that paperwork later on. So that's the first big issue. The next thing is where he's starting to handle this inmate, where this inmate is coming out of this car and he's locking him, into that particular thing. I'm telling you guys, the thing that I didn't see, now I'm not saying he didn't do this, but the one thing I always did before I ever opened that car door, and you could see this one was popped. And I don't care if you're in a sally port. I don't care if you're in a hospital parking lot. I don't care, if you're inside the prison grounds. You still don't necessarily know what this inmate's intentions are toward you when he gets out of that vehicle. So the thing that I always do is, hey, you know what? Show me your restraints. I want to make sure that those leg irons are still on there before that door is ever open. I want to make sure that, if we've got belly chains on them, that they're there, that they're secure, and that everything is right. Because if he's had any kind of time to mess around with them back there, that's the point at which I want to see it. I don't want to see it where, I open the door and he jackrabbits out and we're, trying to chase after him. That makes you look stupid. And we want to avoid looking stupid at all costs. So then moving from there, at this point, there's nothing else that can happen once this inmate has made that decision, once he sees that that gun is right there. And this particular person either didn't have much in the way of retention training, or he didn't pay attention to the retention training he had, because exposing that particular hip to that inmate is asking for a grab of some kind to happen. I don't know what, if any, type of retention holster that he had on there, but you see that it was defeated at some point during that fight. All right, there's no doubt about that. That retention on that was defeated. So what should this particular officer have done about that before it even got that far? Well, I'll tell you right now, if you have a place that, you can go up to that control window and check that weapon in, that's good, because you're going into a secure area anyway, right? So the chances of, the inmate just jumping you right there and you needing that weapon, probably a little bit smaller, but we're not going to rule that out just yet. In a lot of sally ports and stuff, there'll be lock boxes, right? Well, there'll be a locking mechanism. You drop the weapon in there, you shut it. The problem is you've got that key with you. If that inmate is able to hurt you and take that key from you, then that could become an issue. That's why, once again, I harken back to that whole thing. There shouldn't be just one person there. You need to have two people, because if that happens and that inmate was to get that key, he could get into that lockbox and get that weapon. Maybe he would have enough time to defeat more of that lockbox and get that weapon if he really knows what's going on with keys. And a lot of these guys do, I'm here to tell you. So that's what I really see at the tactical level here. And just brushing back to that, though, let's go just back a little bit into what I consider the strategic part, where policy and procedure failed. Like I said before, why is this guy there by himself? Why aren't there two people on this inmate? Is it because of the mobility issue? Well, we saw how well that worked out. I've seen a lot of different times in my career where inmates had just one officer on them. You all know the saying, right? I mean, one is none, two is one, and three is key. Well, I'm not expecting that we're going to get 3 officers on every inmate, but it sure would be nice. But when we only have one individual on there, it's up to them to do everything, and they have no backup. And even if this is a pretty well-behaved inmate, bad things can still happen. What about the possibility of being ambushed? Maybe not even by somebody the inmate knows. Maybe they just hate officers, The other thing to really keep in mind is, what if one of you has a medical emergency? I mean, a heart attack, stroke, something of that nature, diabetic emergency. What if you're in an accident? The chances of both of you being knocked out or unable to continue are a lot smaller than just one of you being knocked out, incapacitated, and unable to secure that inmate in some fashion. So this definitely had that element in it. And so we're not going to excuse the people that made up these policies either. We're not going to just say, oh, that was good enough. Or we're not going to go back to that thing that I talk about all the time, right? Was, well, we've been doing it that way, because that's always just an excuse for having a bad situation turn even crappier, right? So that's basically what I wanted to tell you about that. Other than that, a couple of really basic tips for you guys as you're doing these transports, especially if you're going into an area where you don't have that secure feature of a Sally port or something like that. If you're going into these hospital parking lots and stuff, you know what? Drive by, drive through first, get a way to look at, that door you're going to be going in, make sure there aren't any people outside that might be waiting to ambush you. Try and, surveil that first. The next thing not any particular order necessarily, but, you start out with that inmate, you got to do that search, right? And that thing has to be thorough. It has to be dead on. There can't be anything in his hair. There can't be, anything that's put in some body orifice somewhere. There can't be anything that he has somehow access to. You want to make sure that, some of these places, they have inmates that work out at the service station. What's to stop one of them from leaving, an inmate manufactured key or a weapon or something like that in there? Well, if you're not paying attention, it's pretty easy for them to do that. So your searches have to be perfect. They have to go over every inch of that inmate, and you have to make sure that your transport is going to be perfectly 100% clear of any contraband and any escape paraphernalia and anything else that you can think of. And the next thing that I really like to do is that, especially if I'm carrying on with, some lifer guy or something like that, is I like to call ahead. I call the local police department or sheriff's department. Hey, we've got a lifer inmate that we're going to be bringing into the hospital there. Wanted you guys to be aware. I'm hoping maybe you guys can, throw on a couple of extra patrols through the parking lot, or come down and, say hi to us wherever our room is going to be. Also, make sure that you call to the security guys there in the hospital. Let them know, give them that heads up. Maybe if they've got a couple extra guys around, they can come down and meet you in the hallway. There's nothing wrong with having a little extra backup, especially on these high profile, high security inmates, that are, doing life or double life or triple life or whatever it is. I always like to break this down into, SOSA, right? And that's searches, observation, and situational awareness, SOSA. So just think of that, guys. Anyway, I hope you learned something from this video. I hope that the mistakes here can go to mitigate and stop future mistakes from some people that could be, just not paying attention to what they're doing. This stuff that we're doing, it's critical. And we don't want the things that we're doing that are critical to end up being a critical incident. Anyway, this is Russ Hamilton. I'm signing off. Everyone out there, stay safe.